My name is Noura. I speak 5 languages, but somehow I was never fluent enough for my own family. They called it a dinner, but it was a setup, a seat by the bathroom, a toast that skipped my name, a scarf they said made them uncomfortable. Worse than the silence were the smiles, tight, rehearsed, weaponized. They used my culture as a secret, and my voice as a tool. Now I've uncovered a hidden will, a letter sealed in perfume, and a truth they never thought I'd read. Was it ever about love, or was I always just a translator for a story that was never mine? Want to know what happened next? Keep watching. The hallway smelled like lemon polish and nostalgia. I stood there, just inside the doorway of my mother's home in Northern Virginia, toeing off my shoes as quietly as I could. My reflection stared back at me from the antique mirror above the console table. Tired eyes, perfectly pressed blouse, civilian badge tucked deep inside my coat pocket. On the wall to the right, a row of childhood photos smiled out at me, pigtails, missing front teeth, a birthday cake with frosting Arabic letters. That little girl didn't look anything like the woman staring back from the mirror. I adjusted my scarf, not for modesty, but for comfort. Some part of me always hoped that if I looked just a little softer, a little less intense, maybe my mother wouldn't flinch so much. The air buzzed with the clinks of silverware and faint laughter from the kitchen. A family dinner. Nothing major, just one of those, you should come more often kind of evenings that carried invisible weights. I walked in and saw Celeste first. Her hug was stiff, like always, her perfume too sweet. She pulled back and said, "Still wearing black all the time, huh?" Very serious. "It's a habit," I smiled, brushing it off. "How's the debate team?" Her eyes lit up. "Kyle took first last week. He practically dismantled the opposing side." "That's wonderful." I meant it. Kyle was a bright kid. I made my way to the kitchen, placing the bottle of wine I brought on the counter. My mother turned, drying her hands on a towel, her smile trained and brief. "You look very American today," she said, eyeing my blouse. "Thanks," I replied, not quite knowing how to take it. I tried to make myself small in the corners of the room, catching up with cousins, laughing politely. But the small comments chipped away. At dinner, I sat between Celeste and Uncle Frank, both busy recounting school news and HOA dramas. I kept quiet until Kyle brought up a new book he was reading for school. I wanted to say something encouraging, something warm and proud. "Mumtaz," I said with a smile. "That's Arabic for excellent." Silence. My mother blinked, then said in a practiced tone, "He's excellent. Let's stick to that." I nodded. The salad tasted like metal after that. Later, I excused myself and went into the powder room. I flicked on the light and caught my reflection again. There it was. The smile. That tight, polite stretch of lips I always did before walking into this house. I hadn't even realized I'd done it again. Practiced. Performed. Manufactured. I looked away quickly, then back. Was it always like this? Yes, it was. After dinner, as I helped clear the plates, my mother handed me a serving bowl and said, "You always try so hard, but sometimes I think you're not even one of us anymore." She smiled as she said it. So did I. But inside, I froze. That night, while others drifted toward dessert, I wandered to the bookshelf. On the lowest shelf, behind a dusty stack of outdated cookbooks, was a small frame I hadn't seen in years. Me and my grandmother. She had called me Nour El-Ain, light of her eyes. I picked up the frame, tracing the edge of her face with my thumb. "At least she saw me," I whispered. I was still holding the photograph when I heard Celeste's voice float in from the living room, light and expectant. "Time to cut the cake!" I placed the photo gently on the mantel, my fingers hesitating a moment longer on the frame. My grandmother's eyes in the picture felt like the last ones that had truly seen me. I squared my shoulders and walked back down the hall, the sound of laughter rising like steam from a pot I wasn't stirring. The living room was draped in cheerful blue and gold decorations, and a shiny balloon arched over the table. "Happy birthday, Evan." I blinked. Evan. Of course. His birthday fell just 3 days after mine. This year, apparently, we were doing one celebration. Or I should say, one celebration for Evan. No mention of my birthday, not even a polite nod to the calendar. Everyone was gathered around Celeste, who was smiling that wide, practiced grin of a mother being praised. Evan tore into his gift-wrapped boxes as everyone clapped and cheered. A remote-controlled drone, a new tablet, a signed baseball. My mother handed Celeste a small wrapped box. "You're doing such a wonderful job raising him," she said, her voice proud and loud. "You really deserve this." I sat down on the edge of the couch, folding my hands in my lap. No one looked at me, and I didn't expect them to. I knew how this worked by now. The unspoken rule: the quieter you are, the easier you are to forget. Or maybe that was the goal. Aunt Denise, always too loud and a bit too sharp, piped up from across the room. "You're always working during family things, aren't you, Noura?" I gave her a small smile. "Duty calls." "Maybe it's time to let duty go and start a family already," someone else chimed in. "Maybe my cousin's wife." I didn't look. My mother chuckled, brushing invisible crumbs off her slacks. "That's why Celeste has it right." I bit the inside of my cheek, tasted a thin thread of copper. I nodded, the only armor I had. Nothing good would come from a retort here. I'd learned that the hard way too many times. The toast came later, when the cake was cut and the champagne was passed around in fluted glasses pulled from the back of the cabinet. Uncle Jay stood up with a glass raised high, his voice theatrical and confident. "To Evan," he said, "and to Celeste, who gives so much to this family." Everyone clinked their glasses, a chorus of cheer and pride. No one mentioned me. My mother raised her glass too, eyes scanning the room and briefly meeting mine. She smiled, the kind that barely moves the mouth. It didn't reach her eyes. And just like that, I knew. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't a case of them simply forgetting the date. This was a choice. A quiet decision, wrapped in cheerful bows and selective memory. Erasure doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes it wears pearls and carries a tray of hors d'oeuvres. I thought about all the years I'd tried. The Arabic books hidden under my bed. The language I'd tucked away to make my speech more palatable. The way I'd taught myself to dress down, to be smaller, quieter, less, and still. I stood slowly and excused myself, slipping back down the hallway to the powder room. The same mirror, the same soft lighting, but this time, the smile didn't come. I didn't practice one. I didn't need to. Just a woman staring back, older than she ever imagined she'd be, tired in a way no sleep could fix. My mouth was still. No translation for the kind of hurt that creeps into your bones and makes a home there. From down the hallway, I heard them again, voices low, laughter rising, and then I caught it. A phrase in Arabic, spoken like a joke, tossed lightly into the air. They thought I wouldn't understand, but I did. The bathroom light buzzed softly above me. I hadn't turned it off after staring into the mirror. That same tired woman still looked back, same shoulders pulled tight, same lips pressed thin. I should have opened the door and walked out. I should have gone back to the celebration and plastered on the expected smile. But then I heard them. Voices, not loud, but sharp. My mother's and Aunt Denise's laughter bounced down the hallway like glass tapping tile. Delicate, but with an edge that warned of breakage. "At least Celeste doesn't act like she's better than the rest of us just because she knows some foreign stuff," my mother said in Arabic. Arabic. That alone was a betrayal. We never spoke it in this house. Not growing up, not around company, not even privately. It had always been the language of inconvenience. The language she said would get me stopped at airports. The one she said made her sound like one of them. But here she was, my mother, using Arabic because she thought I wouldn't understand. Aunt Denise responded, tongue clucking. "Nora's always had that look, like we're not enough for her. Like she's measuring everything we say, translating us into something lesser." I froze. The hallway air thickened like wet cloth. My hand rested lightly on the doorknob, but I didn't move, not a breath. "She doesn't belong here anymore," my mother continued. "The girl forgets where she came from. She's not like us." Each word landed with the weight of history. The thing about understanding a language isn't just decoding the words. It's absorbing the rhythm, the contempt, the music of someone's judgment. In Arabic, those sentiments carried heat. Then it came. Noura Kamal al-Rashid, my mother said, as if reciting something grotesque. There was a pause. Sounds like a name from the news, not from this family, Aunt Denise added, and they both laughed. Not loud, but enough. I felt my lungs forget their function. My name, given to me by my grandmother, spoken with love and weight, used now like a punchline. She always thought she was something else, my mother went on. Let her wear her scarf and her pride. She's always been a stranger. Stranger. Not just outsider, not just different, a stranger to them. In my own mother's mouth. I stayed there, hidden behind a door like a child. And for a moment I was one again, small, curled in the hallway of memory. Third grade came rushing back, the day my teacher squinted at the roll sheet and stumbled over Noura Kamal al-Rashid. She called me Noura, said it quickly, like a sneeze. I didn't correct her. Later that night I told my mom. She laughed. Just say yes, she said. No one wants to hear a terrorist name. That was the day I learned to shrink, to prune myself for presentation. And now, decades later, that same voice was saying I no longer belonged in the garden I'd been pruned for. The hallway eventually went quiet. I heard the shuffling of plates, the ding of laughter, and the soft thud of the front door opening. Someone was leaving. I waited 5 more minutes, then stepped out as if nothing had happened. When I returned to the party, no one looked my way. I held my phone to my ear and mouthed apologies to no one, then told them I had an early morning meeting. Work, I said. Classified, sorry. They nodded, barely listening. In the car, I drove in silence. I didn't cry when I got home. Instead, I opened my laptop. Its blue light glowed like a quiet companion in the dark. There was a folder I hadn't touched in years. Teta's letters. Inside were scanned images of old, yellowing sheets. Arabic script curled across each page like roots. Letters from my grandmother, written when I was still too young to read them. She'd passed before I ever could. But I could now. I opened the first one, and I read. Not just read. I translated. Every word, like a vow. I pulled onto the gravel drive of the Lebanese Cultural Center just as the sun was dipping behind oaks, painting the parking lot in long shadows. It had been 1 week since the birthday dinner, since I finally let the mirror see through my practiced smile. I gathered my grandmother's letter, folded in my coat pocket, beneath the dark navy overcoat. I'd chosen my outfit, the way I walked, purposefully. Tonight was a banquet honoring my grandfather's legacy, my mother's father, and I was determined not to be invisible. Inside the hall, chandeliers cast soft light on white tablecloths, candles flickering like quiet witnesses, flags of Lebanon and America hung side by side. Every table was labeled, family table, J. Denise, friends of the community, even distinguished guests. I approached the check-in desk and searched for my name. Nothing. No Noura, no Noura Marwa, no position reserved for translator, daughter, heir. Just empty spaces, full tables, place cards already in hands where mine should have been. Oh, sit anywhere, dear, a volunteer said, giving me a forced smile. I nodded, collected my grandmother's letter as token in hand, and scanned the room. The table I was directed to had little candlelight, no centerpiece. Its chair was placed near the bathroom door, slightly ajar, where staff slipped in and out. It felt like a footnote. I sat, minimizing the dress, folding my hands in my lap. I watched. Celeste and Mother rose to take their places at the head table, under a banner, honoring a life of strength, tradition, and memory. Their friends greeted them, smiles wide and visible. I squeezed my grandmother's letter, trying to feel invisible strength instead of silence. A slideshow began. Childhood photos of my grandfather. Baby steps, family dinners, trips to Beirut, but none had me past college. It was always that way. When the narrative moved forward, I quietly fell out of frame. Connie stepped to the podium. Her dress gleamed under the light, her voice carried years of rehearsed warmth. We gather tonight to remember a man who believed in unity, faith, and family. Those values live on in those of us who carry his love forward. She paused, eyes sweeping the crowd. Celeste, Evan, Jay, Denise, you all embody what he planted in this family. My chest tightened. I leaned forward, as if that would force my presence into her words. Celeste smiled at me. Mother's eyes flicked in my direction and away. Silence held like a weight. I felt something shift, pride, sharp and fresh, rising up through the inarticulate hurt. The phantom of erasure pressed down, and I stood, not with drama, not with anger, but with resolve sharper than any shout. I stood, paper in hand. Model dinner guests freeze when someone disrupts the plan. Tonight, I disrupted. Stepping toward the podium, I lifted my grandmother's letter high. The hall went quiet. Forks paused, eyes widened. If my grandfather's values include speech, tradition, and memory, I said, voice steady, then I too must be named. I looked at Mother. My name is Noura Marwa, and carrying memory means remembering every child in this family. My voice echoed against wood paneling and into the hearts of people who thought I was gone. I didn't ask for applause. I only asked, be seen. Mother's face flushed. Celeste gasped. The irony that the banquet titled Honoring Memory had forgotten memory itself was not lost. No one did what I expected. No excuses were offered. But no one applauded me down either. The silence was deafening. I sat back down at my table, head high. I unfolded the letter and traced the words my grandmother had penned. Words meant for me alone. As plates dropped, conversations resumed, muted, careful, but I felt the tremor of something shifting in the air. Respect or discomfort. It didn't matter. Recognition, however faint, had begun. My presence was no longer background noise. When dessert was served, I saw Amir slip quietly beside me. He slid me a piece of baklava and whispered, "You did good, Aunt Noura." No one asked how he knew. I didn't need an explanation. Tonight, I didn't disappear. The scarf felt heavier than I remembered. Not physically, but in the way memories can sometimes press into your skin, taking up space beside your heartbeat. At dawn, I sat on the edge of my bed, fingers gliding across the soft folds of my grandmother's scarf. Navy blue, hand-stitched edges, and faint traces of rose oil clinging to the threads like a whispered memory. I hadn't worn it in years. Not since college. Not since the last time I felt like I could claim all parts of myself out loud. I folded it carefully, tucking it into my work bag, the decision made without ceremony. I didn't need to announce it. I just needed to be it. The Pentagon buzzed with its usual subdued urgency when I arrived. My security badge clipped, boots clicking against the polished floors, eyes forward. Only today, the scarf was pinned neatly beneath my blazer collar, flowing softly over my shoulder. I felt it like armor. Robert saw me first in the hallway. His eyes widened just a hair before he covered it with a nod. "Morning," he said, the word clipped. I nodded back. In the break room, someone from HR slowed near the door, her coffee forgotten halfway to her lips. She smiled, tight. "New look?" I stirred my tea. Old identity, just not hidden anymore. Silence followed me like an extra shadow. At the translation briefing, my supervisor paused for half a breath longer than usual when I entered. Her gaze rested on the scarf before shifting quickly to her notes. But I nailed my segment. Clear, concise, precise. A quiet command of the room. No one dared say anything. The silence, however, felt less like approval and more like containment. At lunch, I slipped into the courtyard, scrolling through my phone for a moment of peace. That's when the text lit up the screen. "Call me now. Celeste." I stared at it for a beat, then another. The message pulsed like an alarm. I stepped into the shade of a nearby pillar and dialed. She picked up instantly. "What are you doing?" Her voice was tight, already fraying at the edges. What? The scarf, Noura. At your job? Really? You think you're making a point, but you're making a scene. I exhaled through my nose. Why do you care? There was a beat of static, then her voice again, lower, as if shielding herself from an imaginary audience. Mom's upset. She thinks you're doing this to embarrass her. I smiled, bitter. She doesn't need my help for that. Don't, Celeste snapped. There's a dinner Saturday, with community folks, people Dad invited. Just don't wear it, please. You'll ruin it for all of us. All of us. Not you'll embarrass yourself. Not you'll make Mom uncomfortable. Us. A unified family unit I hadn't been part of in years, except as an afterthought, or a problem. I didn't say anything. Celeste sighed on the other end, the sound weighty and self-important. I'm just trying to help you not make things worse. She hung up. I stood for a moment, phone still in hand, staring out at the gray stone walls around me. I wondered when my own name had stopped being said with warmth, when concern turned into control. Back at my desk, I tried to shake it off. Focus on the tasks in front of me. Reports, translations, timelines. I was good at this. So good that sometimes I forgot what it cost. I remembered the first few months on the job. I had avoided anything that made me stand out. No Arabic lunches, no phone calls in my native tongue, no political pins, no scarf. Neutral was safe, neutral was invisible. But the erasure hadn't started at the Pentagon. It had started at home. And now the idea of being seen terrified me a little less than being overlooked again. That evening, as I gathered my things to leave, I left the scarf on. In the elevator mirror, I caught my reflection. I expected to see rebellion or defiance, but all I saw was a woman finally aligned with herself. I translate for generals, I whispered. I can speak for myself. And that would have to be enough. I arrived 10 minutes early. The scarf rested gently against my collarbone, pinned carefully under my navy coat. It wasn't a statement. It wasn't rebellion. It was just me, whole and intact for once. But something in the pit of my stomach warned me. This dinner was never about welcoming me back. It was about reminding me where I stood. The restaurant was dimly lit, all flickering candles and white linens with soft oud music playing in the background. A long table stretched near the window, already half filled with familiar faces. Connie sat at the center, regal in a silk blouse, Celeste next to her in a perfect cream cardigan. They didn't wave when they saw me, just nodded, acknowledgement, not greeting. A hostess led me to the far end of the table, near the kitchen door. Evan, Celeste's husband, stood as I approached. Hey, Noura, he said, smiling too politely, like someone warned not to say too much. Long time. Yeah, I murmured, sitting. Seems dinners come with assigned seating now. He chuckled, unsure if it was a joke. I let the silence thicken. Waiters arrived with grape leaves and hummus, placing dishes like chess pieces. Around me, conversation flowed, snippets of vacation plans, PTA meetings, someone's new patio furniture. But no one asked about Syria, or linguistics, or the letter from Teta I'd translated just that morning. That knowledge belonged to another version of me, one they didn't bother setting a place for. Mid-meal, Connie tapped her glass with the back of her spoon. The clinking sliced through the chatter like a gavel. Let's pause for a moment, she said, voice too bright. We're so proud of Noura, translating secrets for the government. Who would have thought, huh? Laughter erupted, brief, performative. My cheeks burned, not from pride but from the sting of being presented like an oddity. Aunt Denise added, and doing it while looking like her grandmother. Strong women run in our blood. Eyes shifted. I felt them land not on my face but on the scarf, on the symbol, not the soul. Celeste leaned in with a soft, calculated smile. You wear it beautifully. Then she turned away, cueing the others to resume eating. Compliment complete. Box checked. I lifted a forkful of rice but didn't taste a thing. Later, when dessert was served, flaky baklava, syrup pooling in gold-rimmed plates, Aunt Denise nudged my elbow. "Walk with me?" she asked. Outside, the air was sharp and clean, the kind of chill that wakes you up. We strolled along the curb, and she didn't light a cigarette, but she held her fingers like she wanted to. "Listen," she began. "We need your help." That was quick. "Okay." "There are some documents from Tata's things, Arabic stuff. Her lawyer says we're missing pieces." My stomach twisted. "You think I have them?" She smiled, sweet as pomegranate seeds hiding bitterness. "I think you can help preserve what's ours. You've got the skills, sweetheart, and the blood." Ah, there it was. So this was never about olive branches. It was about leverage. They didn't need Noura the daughter. They needed Noura the translator, the asset, the conduit to things they couldn't name. I nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." Back in my car, I sat for a long time with the engine off. How many times had I decoded conversations like this for strangers in war zones? Twisted phrases, sugar-coated threats, power masked as politeness. They'd praised my appearance, not my presence, needed my mind, not my voice. This wasn't dinner, this was deployment. But I wasn't angry. I was fluent in silence by now, but this time I would write the next script. I woke this Monday morning with a tight knot in my chest. The taste of baklava and candlelight still lingered in my throat. The banquet had ended days ago, but its echoes haunted me. The glare when I stood, the hush when I asserted my name. Coffee cooled beside me as I opened my laptop. Inbox, one unread message from a blocked address. I clicked. There it was. A PDF attachment labeled simply, "Will Draft, Arabic English, Signature." My throat tightened. My grandmother's will, the one everyone said had been lost. The email read, "You were right to wear the scarf. They haven't told you everything. Start with the signature on page 2. No sender name, no apology, just a clue." My hands shook slightly as I downloaded it to the secure workstation. I stared at the document, typed English, flowing Arabic beneath. The heading bore the date, 6 months before Teta passed. There, in elegant script, was her name, Noura Marwa, partial trustee of certain documents and properties in Lebanon. I sank back in my chair. This was more than I'd expected. The original will, I recalled, was declared misplaced after grandfather's funeral. But this, the draft, this wasn't missing. It was hidden. At work, I tried to focus. The hum of printers, footsteps on linoleum, soft ringing phones, but I felt observed. I glanced at my supervisor's door as I passed. Her face was neutral, but when she thought I wasn't looking, her brow creased. Later, when I opened my desk drawer, I noticed a small sticky note stuck under the keyboard tray. "Careful who sees you reading Arabic here." The words were typed, but the ink had been smudged, like the writer was ashamed of writing them. That evening I drove to Evan's house. Celeste and Mom were there. I felt the draft's weight in my coat pocket like a weight I carried for them. I knocked. Nobody answered. I waited. Then Evan opened the door. He smiled, wary. "Hey, Noura." I moved past, paper in hand. "Do you remember what year you signed those witness papers for Teta's estate?" His face flickered. "It was all a blur after the hospital," he said. "Funny, because this draft is dated before the hospital stay." He paused. His eyes searched mine. "You shouldn't have that," he whispered. So I said, "So you do know what I'm talking about." He didn't deny it. He just stood, hands in pockets, looking away. Later, driving home, I laid out every version of the will I could find in my mind. The English ones, neat and safe. The Arabic bits, alive with intentions, with meanings lost in translation. The way justice in Arabic had nuances in Tata's handwriting that didn't carry into the typed English text. They used my silence to build the structure of our family. By the time I parked in my garage, dusk holding the sky in purple and gray, I felt something crack. Not anger exactly, but determination. Because I speak both languages, in my job, in my heart, and they underestimated what I could translate. The auditorium lights felt softer than I remembered, like they were waiting to be broken. I walk past the greeting table, scarf draped under my coat, heart steady. It's been 2 months since the email with the will draft, since Evan's face when he whispered I wasn't supposed to have it. Tonight I stop bending. Tonight I stand. Flags of Lebanon and America flank the stage. Photos of community leaders, local heroes, former soldiers, children reciting poetry, all frame the wall like stained glass. Connie takes the podium with a warm introduction, celebrating those who bridge worlds, those who carry 2 homes in 1 heart. My pulse drums in my ears as I find a seat near the center. Among neighbors, colleagues, and even military officers in uniform, there's a tension I can taste. Applause ripples. I grip the edge of my chair. Someone whispers, "Isn't that Noura?" and then regrets it. I look to Mother. She's smiling, proud, her eyes scanning the crowd as if she's already won. Then he walks forward. General Tarek Zidane, tall, composed. When he begins to speak, the room hushes. Connie steps aside. I can hear my breath in the silence. He pauses, then scans the faces up front, then those in the back. "You mocked her. She honored us." The words strike like stones. A camera flash. Someone raises a phone. Chaos blooms in slow motion. Mother's smile flickers. Celeste's lips part. Guest faces shift. Some proud, some surprised. Silence follows. A gasp somewhere. A hand over a mouth. I taste triumph, not vengeance. Within minutes, the clip is circulating. A text curve, a social media ripple. Arabic chat groups light up. She needed to be heard. Brave. You were hidden too long. A student I taught writes, "I always thought you hid, but you teach by existing." Then comes Mother's reaction. She stands frozen behind her chair. Her hand hovers over her chest. She doesn't speak. There is no excuse. I stand too, but not to leave. I lift my chin and allow my presence to fill the space. I let them see. After the speeches, as people stream out, several shake my hand. A neighbor I barely know murmurs, "Thank you." A woman with kind eyes says, "Your courage helped me say something I've held in for years." I meet Mother's eyes from across the room. She looks away. Tonight, I feel seen. I left the hall feeling reclaimed, but the war was not over. Some wounds don't bleed. They settle quietly into the corners of our memory, pulsing only when touched. And lately, everything had been pressing those corners. Words, letters, silence. A few weeks passed. The air in Northern Virginia turned crisp, the kind that hints at the first frost. My scarf grew heavier, less symbolic, more practical. And then the letter came, creamy, embossed, formal. Connie Marwa, through her estate attorney, requested my presence for final document closure. Closure. Such a foolish word. Neat, clinical. The kind of word that pretends grief can be filed away in manila folders. I didn't plan to go. But I went. Not in protest. Not in hope. But because stories, even the ugly ones, deserve an ending. Mr. Khalid's office sat in a row of tan-bricked buildings in a quiet cul-de-sac. Inside, it smelled of old paper and lemon cleaner. I wore gray, understated armor. Celeste was already there, eyes downcast. My brother, Kareem, shifted uncomfortably in his chair when I entered. We nodded. That was enough. Mr. Khalid cleared his throat. "Thank you for coming. This will be brief." He began reading. It was all very procedural. Property transfer, bank account closure, some charitable donations to her women's club. Celeste and Kareem nodded along. I watched the corners of the room. Then Mr. Khalid paused. "There is an addendum, handwritten, not notarized, but included per the family's request." He adjusted his glasses and read slowly. "To Noura, my daughter, I leave one thing more. I ask forgiveness. I hid your father's letters. I couldn't bear to see how much he loved you when mine had grown cold. I was not fair. I was not ready. But I never stopped being your mother. even if I forgot how to show it. Silence. Not awkward, just weighty. Kareem choked. A tiny, sharp sound. Celeste's hand flew to her mouth. I sat still. My palms were open on my lap. She enclosed one of the letters, Mr. Khalid said. From your father. He handed it to me like it might burn. It was creased, thin, in that slanted script I'd memorized from old postcards. The date, 1 week before his accident. Tell Noura she is my courage. Tell her that I watched her learn the shape of truth before most adults can spot a lie. Tell her I was proud, wildly, unreasonably proud, even if I never said it loud enough to echo in her bones. I pressed it to my chest. It echoed now. There was no jewelry, no heirloom left for me. Not even the embroidered shawl I remembered from Tetta's winter mornings. But there was one thing, wrapped in an old scarf inside a box, her Quran. The pages were yellowing, marked with tabs and small penciled notes. The edges smelled like her hands, lemon soap and rose oil. I opened to the page most worn, the verse she'd read aloud when I was 10, frightened by a thunderstorm. And with hardship comes ease. I forgave her, not the woman who had spoken daggers, not the one who had placed me behind toilets and beneath toasts, but the girl who had grown up believing love had to be rationed, who feared that softness equaled weakness, who saw her daughter's light and mistook it for distance. She had been a child, too, once. That night, I sat in the garden behind my house. The wind moved gently through the maple branches, carrying with it a scent of something almost familiar. I thought of my father's poetry, the way he played with metaphor and memory like musicians do with notes. I held his letter in one hand and whispered the last line aloud, voice steady, heart full. May you always write your own translation. I had. The snow was gentler in Michigan than I remembered. It fell with a hush, not the aggressive slush that layered the D.C. suburbs. This snow felt nostalgic, forgiving, as if it knew I came not seeking shelter but understanding. I hadn't walked these streets in over a decade. They felt narrower now, as if the world had outgrown the grid of my childhood. I didn't call anyone to pick me up from the airport. I needed the hum of the rental car beneath me. I needed to choose my own route to memory. The house wasn't ours anymore. That fact I'd accepted years ago. But seeing it again, wrapped in a string of blinking Christmas lights, with a plastic snowman on the lawn and wreaths in the window, struck something quiet in me. A girl, maybe 16, stepped outside wearing a hijab and a Detroit Lions hoodie. She picked up a food delivery from the porch. Our eyes met. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just nodded. The kind of nod that says, I see you. I walked on. Past the schoolyard fence where I'd once been told my lunch smelled funny. Past the library where Tita had shushed me through pages of translated fairy tales. Past the corner store that used to sell Arabic newspapers, now converted into a nail salon called Glamorama. The town had changed, not unrecognizably, just enough. The community center bore a new mural now, painted faces of immigrant elders across brick. The mosque, once a modest structure behind the gas station, had expanded into a full-blown Islamic center with a garden and community pantry out front. I stood outside for a long time, just breathing, letting the newness and the history mix like warm air meeting frost. Inside a bookstore, I found something I hadn't expected: my father's name. A plaque above the poetry section read, "In honor of Kamal al-Rashid, who believed language could bridge anything." I ran my fingers along the edge. The owner emerged from the back. "You're his daughter, aren't you?" he asked. I nodded. My voice caught in my throat. He donated a bunch of volumes before he passed, said poetry was how he talked to God. It felt like a benediction. I bought nothing, but I left everything, grief, pride, apology, in that moment. At a coffee shop near the train station, I wrote in my journal, not about the will, not about Celeste or my mother, just about snow, about language, about the teenager with the nod, about how some returns aren't about reclaiming a home, but about releasing it. Then came a voicemail from my brother. His voice was softer than usual. "I found another letter," he said. "From Dad. It ends with, 'Never let grief be the reason you stop building.' Thought you'd want to hear that." I didn't cry. I just pressed the phone to my chest like the words might beat their own rhythm into my heart. Before I left town, I returned to the bookstore and slipped a note between two anthologies. He lived here, and so did we. Thank you. Driving away, the snow thickened. My reflection in the rearview wasn't stern anymore, not hollow, just older, softer, like someone who had stopped asking for permission to belong. I didn't look back. I returned to Virginia a few days ago. The sky is overcast tonight, rain hanging heavy over the city like a question without an answer. My small apartment feels fuller than ever, with old boxes, papers from Dad's estate, her letters, yet I feel hollow, like I'm listening to echoes of what used to be. I sit at the kitchen table, a steaming cup of tea in hand. Rain taps against the window pane, a slow, persistent heartbeat. I haven't texted my brother yet, haven't called, because I don't know what words I owe him, or whether I owe them at all. I push aside one dusty folder and discover a letter I wrote when I was 20, just after college, before I understood how much weight a mother's silence can carry. I never sent it. The paper is yellowed now, the ink smudged, some lines faded. I read, "Why don't you see me? Why must I shrink so that you can feel safe?" My voice cracks. I pause. I speak more softly now as the older version of myself. "Because I thought your love was all I deserved." For the first time, I let her words echo in my apartment, not as blame, but as truth. I ask out loud, "Were you ever proud of me, Mama?" The silence answers me. Later, I finally call Kareem. His voice is cautious. "Hey," I say. "Hey," he replies. "You okay?" Do you ever feel like Mom's voice is still guiding everything? All the dinners, the words she didn't say, the things she said like they were whispers in Arabic you didn't understand? He sighs softly. "All the time. I used to think you were strong for keeping quiet, but maybe strength is something else." We laugh, unexpected and gentle, then fall into a comfortable silence. Not painful, familiar. He confesses he sometimes hears her footsteps in the house, feels her presence in the rooms, and wonders if we ever stopped being children in her eyes. I tell him I still hear her voice when I'm alone, in quiet moments. She tells me I should be just enough, that I should quiet down. I realized tonight I held on, not to her love, but to her approval. I built walls behind my own lips. I pull out old journals. Did my younger self complaining about plates being passed without thanks, scarves tucked away, names mispronounced. I remember a friend who offered help during a messy week. I turned her away because I thought her kindness meant she pitied me. I see now, I was the one holding the pain. I stoked the loneliness. I sealed doors. I blamed absence. I polished my silence into expectations. All because I believed disappearing was safer than making someone uncomfortable. I write a sentence into a notebook I bought last week, blank pages heavy with possibility. What if it was never about being forgotten, but about remembering too much? The rain slows. I pull on a coat and step into twilight without an umbrella, something my mother used to do, letting the weather wash her face. A sense of childhood returns, sharp and honest. In the park, a young girl huddles under a bench, reading. A thin bench roof overhead, safe from wet. I watch her. I remember waiting under trees for someone to notice me. I leave my umbrella by the bench when I walk away, light in my hand, voice quiet but certain inside. I let her have a small shelter. I let myself walk onward. That night, I dream of a table. Clean, white tablecloth, candles lit, laughter. Faces I know and faces I don't. No one missing, but no one speaking either. And there is peace. Maybe silence isn't always void. Maybe it's what remains when words finally lose the power to wound. I woke before sunrise. the world outside still dark and cold. My breath hung in little clouds as I moved through the quiet of my Virginia home. In the dim light, I found the Quran my mother left me, a slim volume wrapped in a piece of scarf I used to hide. I closed my eyes over its cover, feeling its weight in my hands. The air was sharp, electric, as if change had already begun before I opened my eyes. I retrieved the envelope given to me at the law office, but never opened. It smelled faintly of rose and sandalwood, the same gentle perfume Tedda used when she thought no one was watching. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with hope. Inside, a letter addressed to me, not to Celeste, not to Mom, to me. Written years ago by Tedda. Her script, tender and flowing. She wrote of love that stammered in silence, of a proud daughter she hoped would not be silenced. She admitted she was never able to say all the words, but she believed I would speak them someday. Among her farewell lines, I found a phrase in Arabic she had never spoken publicly, a blessing poem line. You are light in the wound. Light in the wound. My throat clenched. Later that morning, I gathered Mom, Celeste, and Kareem in the living room. My hands steadier than I felt, I held the letter high, in my voice a quiet firmness. I read the phrase in Arabic first, Anti Nour fi al-jar. Then I translated, You are the light in the wound. Mom's face tightened. Celeste's eyes glistened. Kareem looked away, guilt in his posture. For a moment, her attempt to interrupt was paused by the weight of her own words. None of us spoke afterward. The silence spoke more truth than any argument. That afternoon, Amir ran into the room, small hands clutching something wrapped in brown paper. Didi, he said, using the word he calls me, my aunt. He handed me a simple wooden box, finely carved. On its lid, delicate Arabic calligraphy spelled shukran, thank you. He said, For you, because you taught me my first words. The box trembled in my hands. I opened it. Inside, a music box with a gentle tune, the kind my grandmother used to hum in the kitchen. The melody was familiar. Home, apology, repair. Silence flooded the room again, this time soft, hopeful. I placed the letter and music box on the mantel. Symbols, yes, but alive ones. I turned to my mother. I don't need your love to exist, I said, voice steady. But I do choose respect. I will speak Arabic. I will use my words. Then I packed, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. This time not to run, to live. Hours later, I stood outside in frost. Dawn's light pale and promising. The scarf wrapped around my neck felt less like armor, more like belonging. I exhaled, breath visible in the chill. In that moment, I felt something light inside. Something like belonging, fragile but real. This isn't perfect peace. There are cracks still where coldness once froze my heart. But it is my truth made visible. Before the day ended, I opened my laptop. I typed a post, the letter, the music box photo, the poem in Arabic and its translation in English. I pressed publish. Followers I didn't expect shared stories. Comments poured in. Thank you for speaking. You make me proud. My own mother still can't say my name. For the first time, my story wasn't just heard. It was witnessed. What does it mean to be seen, not just looked at, but truly seen? Through Noura's journey, we witness a truth that many of us carry but rarely name, that silence can protect, but it can also imprison. Sometimes, the loudest voice is the one we've buried within ourselves, waiting for permission to rise. If there's one thing I've learned from telling this story, it's this. Identity is not a compromise. It's not something to dim down to fit a room, or fold away to make others comfortable. The scarf, the language, the names, they are not symbols of separation. They are bridges. And it's not too late to walk across them. So ask yourself, what have you been hiding just to belong? What truth about your past could actually be your power? Maybe you felt like Noura, like your voice was too much, or not enough. But maybe, just maybe, Someone out there is waiting for you to speak so they can recognize themselves in your words. If this video touched something in you, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't resonate, I still want to hear from you. Tell me why and where you found this story. And if you want more stories like this, stories that heal, challenge, and connect us, please hit that subscribe button. Join us for the next chapter. This isn't just a channel, it's a community. Until next time, keep your story alive.